me and my friend were reaching out to as many people as possible who could use this software. And well, one of those people was my own school. They were having a semi-formal dance, and I was thinking they could use the song request system at the party, because that same year they had used it at the Halloween dance. So I reached out to them and I told them, hey, you could use the song request software. They were excited to use it because at the Halloween dance, they saw it was like a massive success. There were 170 song requests. And so they're like, okay, yeah, we'll use it. And then I told them, okay, so actually this time that it's a bigger party, I'm going to charge you guys a fee for it. And it's going to be $100. Then they said, oh no, they were telling me that they were literally spending $3,000 on decorations for the party, and they couldn't afford to spend $100 on a system for the song request. I was frustrated at the time. It wasn't so funny at the moment. Like,
did you also have some other examples where you talked to someone and try to take advantage of you?
Yeah, so through a friend that I had, he connected me to one of his friends who was working on this AI startup. What ended up happening is I saw he was delaying and dragging things on so much. He saw me as more of his employee rather than his co-founder. So I decided to leave.
Like, listening to this story, I've actually experienced something very similar as well, to be honest, because when I started out doing my, marketing company, I was like 3 months in, and then there's this guy on LinkedIn who decided to message me, and he was like,
this episode, we will have Daniel Martinez, who is a 17-year-old who has been scammed 2 times and being taken advantage of with his coding skills. Let's get straight into the stories.
So Daniel was spoken about 12 hours ago, and I gotta say, you're just someone who built so much different things when you're a young age, right? And you managed to also meet Eric Ju a couple months ago in an event. Super exciting there. So if we just take a step back and zoom to your early life, like when you were 11, 12, or 13, or even before that, what would you say your childhood was like?
So I remember back when I was little, I was always really curious about like electronics and stuff. I remember I had a remote control car, and I wanted to figure out what made it work, like how it worked on the inside, how the remote could control it and everything. So I wanted to take it apart and see what was inside. And then what happened after that was that it just stopped working. It like completely broke, and then I had to figure out with my dad like how to fix it, and like we had to solder on some pieces. It was really like annoying to have to fix it after that, but I was always very curious into like electronics. That's sort of what led me into robotics. Back when I was 12, I started taking these classes at a local robotics like place, and I started learning about Arduino and all that. I actually ended up skipping one of their units because I was just doing research on my own, figuring out how to use servo motors, and I was very, very passionate about it. And then after that, I started getting into web development in grade 8 because I always wanted to make websites, and I wanted to make an online multiplayer game, kind of like the games we would play at school, like Agar.io and stuff like that. And with the knowledge I had, I just couldn't make it. So I had to learn that, and that's what got me into web development. And from that point on, like when I was 13, I started building websites for clients, and then I started building apps like that online multiplayer game, and then I started building stuff that people could actually use, like a social media app. And I also, in grade 9, I started building like a small company over the summer selling 3D printed phone stands. I was always into many, many different things. I sort of went through more phases when I was growing up, just doing like baking, sewing, a bunch of different things. But I've always been curious about tech. And so that led me down this path of becoming a web developer and building actual products people use.
Awesome. Super fascinating. So just going back to, like the early ages, like when you started web development, do you still remember what were some of the core resources that you used like when you were young to teach yourself, and what I would say you would recommend anyone who's trying to also start out in the tech world or trying to also leverage, AI, right? AI is a huge topic. Also want your thoughts on that, like, pair programming, stuff like that. So what would you suggest anyone who's looking to start out to use?
So, I mean, of course, YouTube is one of the biggest resources that people use to learn. I used it to learn how to make my first multiplayer game. on online. But then I actually just found a course on Udemy. I was looking to learn programming, and I saw a course. It was like called the Complete Web Developer course, and I just bought it for $15. And then at the time we had online school, so sometimes I would be bored because I already knew some of the stuff that we were learning. So I would just have my course open on my iPad on the side, and then on my computer I would be following along and learning, just going through every unit. I think it was like 30 hours, but like I was just really into it, so it was pretty quick to complete. And yeah, if you're really interested in it, in like learning how to program, and you're good at self-directed learning, I would definitely recommend doing it on your own, because that way you can go at your own pace. Like sometimes I was just bored in class and I could do it. So that's what I would recommend. Nowadays with ChatGPT as well and AI, it's so much easier to learn because you can just ask if you have a question. It's not like back when I was learning, you'd have to go on Stack Overflow, and sometimes you'd have to scroll and look for answers to any issues you were having. So nowadays with ChatGPT, it's even better. And I think that's going to open a lot of opportunities for young people learning how to code.
Yeah, awesome. So before we go back into those juicy stories, which I'm super, invested towards, with AI right now, like how are you utilizing it in like your current projects? And also, would you say the current programs, like the courses that you took before, how effective were they actually in terms of, I guess, like teaching you enough technological skills so that you could build your own versions or like some other games? Because, on the internet, some people are saying tutorials are really not really that effective because you're only following a certain step and really you're not expanding on it. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like tutorials aren't like the end of it. I know like people usually on the internet, they try to like create sensationalism. It's like all tutorials are a waste of time. They're not a waste of time. And I think if you take a good course, it can teach you the basics that you need. Because I didn't know how to like use HTML, CSS, JavaScript when I was starting out. So I needed to have this guidance to understand and like fill these gaps of knowledge that I had. And so that did help me, like following along with the course helped me learn these different skills and how to apply them in mini projects. But after I finished the course, I had to actually start building real things, real products that I wanted to create or that people needed to solve a specific problem. And then when you start building stuff, like when I was building Gore, a mental health app that I made, I was learning React Native at the very same time. Like I was just learning, looking up on Google how to do certain things, and you learn very quickly when you're actually applying it to a specific project. So you can't just stay like in tutorial land forever. You have to actually go out and build stuff, and that's what's gonna help you develop a wide, like vast amount of knowledge that you can use in building different kinds of products. Because now I know how to build mobile apps. I know how to do web development, how to do online multiplayer games, because I learned that like on a specific project that I made. So you gain a general knowledge by building real projects. And in terms of the AI stuff, back then, like AI was not so prominent. It was like a lot more difficult to get started because you would have to build your own models and do stuff like that. But with the access to like these APIs of these big large language model providers, like I just learned by looking up documentation and watching videos on how to implement it. And you can use AI to even build other AI applications because of how it helps you program so quickly. So yeah, that it's been pretty interesting and in learning like throughout the creation of different projects.
So like, you've done lots of multiple projects in your high school career, right? So what was your first project that you've done, and what was the overall story of how you, found your co-founders or how you scaled it, and what was your overall experience?
So my first project, I mean, technically it would be back in grade 8 when I was building an online multiplayer game. for a class. It was like an English class, and we needed to build some kind of project to demonstrate our dedication to something. I decided to build that game. I didn't have any co-founders or anything. I just decided to learn online by looking up tutorials and trying to implement that into what I was building. But if we're talking about the first project where I did have a co-founder, I think that would be back around last year when I was at a hackathon, and I was with a friend that I met through social media. He replied to one of my stories when I was building a social app in grade 10, and we became close friends. We went to a hackathon and we decided to build a project called Q, and it was very like basic at the time when we built at the hackathon, but we continued building it, and I did a lot of the coding at the beginning, and we started to talk to actual places where we could use the software. It was a real-time song request software for parties, so that people wouldn't have to go up to the DJ and ask for a song request, and there might be a lineup, and the DJ doesn't know if many people want the same song. So what they could do is scan the QR code at the party, and they would search for any song on Spotify and add it to a queue, and based on popularity, it would go up or down the queue. So we started reaching out to a lot of different places, and even like this event that I went to in downtown Toronto called Founder TO, and they said that they were going to have music playing. So I just emailed them, and like, sometimes you got to like just shoot your shot, you'll never know, but if you don't try. So I just emailed them and said, hey, I saw that you're doing, that you're playing music and that you might want to take song requests. So I actually built this software where you can take song requests and you could use it for free if you're interested. It was just a good way of getting exposure. And so, like me and my friend just worked doing things like that. And that's how we got a lot of opportunities and exposure for our project. And even though it didn't end up being like a very lucrative project, we ended up getting a solid thing that we could put on our resume, because it was not just a project that we created. It was something that actually created value for people and solved the problem. And people were excited to use it. And it was always so amazing seeing in person when people were excited to put in their song requests in real time and be like, wow, they're actually playing my song. So yeah, I'd say if you're looking for co-founders for your first project, look to your friends, because if you can find friends who are also passionate about solving the same problem, it's going to be so much better than just trying to look for random people.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I'm just thinking about it because this is such a specific pain point that you're solving. So what was the story with how you found out that you wanted to serve this specific, community?
For song requests, well, it was just like the previous year at the same hackathon, my friend actually wanted to build something similar. It just, they never really formulated the idea properly. So when that year came along, we were thinking, what could we build that actually does something for people? And I remember back when I was in Quebec over the summer, the previous summer, for this French immersion program, there were like parties organized by the program organizers, and we had like a DJ there at the party, but I realized people were literally lining up to ask the DJ for a specific song, and then the DJ had to write down in a notebook. So that's when I realized this would be a really good idea, because for the DJ, I can imagine it's super annoying to have people come up when he's performing. He's using all of his attention on trying to blend the songs together and just make it a good experience for everyone. And then at the same time, he has to handle all these people asking something, and it's super loud. So like, it obviously isn't such a huge, like, life-changing solution to a big problem, but it's just like something that's like a little irritating, and something that we could use to make the experience better for everyone at the party. And we didn't really see the impact at the moment that it had, because when we were demoing, like, of course, it's just like, it's cool to see your song request pop up on the screen immediately when you make the request, but you don't see how valuable it actually is until you're at a party and then people are actually using this software to request songs. And it was just, it feels really good to see people getting value out of your product. And yeah, like if you ever build a product like that services people in a way and it makes them actually happy, it's the best feeling in the world. So definitely try to go for that. I think it's very fulfilling.
I think I had similar experience as well. Like happy clients. I was also doing like B2B marketing for tech startups, and when you can deliver results for your clients, right? It's always the best feeling. Like it's not only yourself winning, signing the retainer or whatever, but it's actually seeing your clients being satisfied, which really makes you super happy. So diving more into some of your other projects as well. What are some other crazy stories that you have? Like, have you pulled in Eric Ju, so-called, in high school? Or what was your craziest experience?
In terms of Eric Chu, I haven't really done that stuff so much. I mean, I did post on LinkedIn recently that I was taking a VC call from the library. Fortunately, I have a spare, so I don't have class that period. I had to move my classes around to accommodate for this program that I'm doing called League of Innovators. And I've also been taking like other business meetings as a result of that, trying to scale my startup. But I have a couple of like kind of crazy stories from different projects that I've worked on. So we could start, I guess, from the song request software we were just talking about, Q. Like I remember, like I was just mentioning how me and my friend were reaching out to as many people as possible who could use this software. And well, one of those people was my own school. They were having a semi-formal dance, and I was thinking they could use the song request system at the party because that same year they had used it at the Halloween dance. So the whoops. So I reached out to them and I told them, hey, you could use the song request software. And they were excited to use it because at the Halloween dance, they saw it was like a massive success. There were 170 song requests. And so they're like, okay, yeah, we'll use it. And then I told them, okay, so actually this time that it's a bigger party, there's going to be hundreds of people there. I'm going to charge you guys a fee for it. And it's going to be $100.
Yeah.
And then they said, oh no, we loved having it at the Halloween dance, but we can't do that. But then at the same time, I remember going to these student council meetings, the people who were organizing it, and they were telling me that they were literally spending $3,000 on decorations for the party, and they couldn't afford to spend $100 on a system for the song request. And I had actually spoken to the DJ who was going to be performing there for that event, and he said he was excited to use it, but because the school didn't want to pay the $100, they didn't want to continue using it. So at the same time, though, I was speaking to this other athletic council who runs the morning announcements at my school, and they wanted to use it for like songs that they play on the morning announcements so that people could request songs. And then what ended up happening is I actually got them to sign off on me putting posters around the school so that people could scan this QR code. And one thing I put at the bottom of the poster, like the posters are actually back there. These are the kind of posters at the bottom over here. You can see there's a white section. I put a text that said, vote to have Q at your semi-formal, because I wanted people to show their interest of having it so that the student council might feel pressured to actually pay for it. Mm-hmm. And then what ended up happening there is one of the girls from the student council ended up ripping down the posters because they ended up saying, we don't want to pay for the software, so you can't have it saying to have song requests, because then that's like false information and whatever. It was ridiculous because I ended up putting these posters back up and they ended up ripping them down again. And it was just like, I was just like, I was frustrated at the time. It wasn't so funny at the moment. Like, it felt like I was basically starting a war against the student council. And it was just a funny story. But yeah, like some people, they don't like when you're trying to start something new, and maybe there's something in themselves that prompts them to try to rip down your posters and like destroy your work. Yeah, that was a funny thing that happened last year, actually.
I mean, speaking about that point, like, I think you also talked about, like, before our podcast, you talked about how there's like bad apples out there, right? You know, when you talk to people on LinkedIn, stuff like that. So did you also have like
Yeah.
some other examples where you talked to someone and try to take advantage of you?
Yeah, so that was back in grade 10, so like 2 years ago. Through a friend that I had, he connected me to one of his friends who was working on this AI startup. That was basically that he wanted to search through YouTube videos semantically. So what that means is, if you're looking for a specific section that talks about the dangers of AI, for example, you can just type in the box the dangers of AI, and even though in like a 2-hour podcast they don't mention a single sentence that's the dangers of AI, it'll be able to understand your sentence and find moments in the podcast that are related to that topic.
So machine learning.
So he wanted to create something like that, and we started working on it together. He was supposedly doing the machine learning side of things, and I would do the rest of the application, like actually building this Chrome extension, saving users in the database, storing their searches, and then also taking payments so that it could turn into an actual startup. And the project went like for a couple of months, and then over the summer I was busy, and I just couldn't, during these 5 weeks where I was in this program in Quebec, I couldn't spend so much time, and she would be texting me constantly, like to update him on the progress. And I just couldn't do that because I was busy. And when I got back, I ended up finishing my side of the project. So all of this Chrome extension and the user interface, but I was still waiting on his side of things, which was the machine learning for the searching process to actually work on these YouTube videos. And he still wasn't done. Like, it was so ironic to me how he was pressuring me so much. And every time we would have a meeting, I would ask him, so, how's the development going? And also, I wanted to know how the split would work. Like, are we co-founders? Are we 50-50? And he said, oh, let's just think of it as a project right now. What ended up happening is I saw he was delaying and dragging things on so much that I just wanted to, like, it made me feel very uncomfortable how every time I brought up like how the business is going to work, he just, he would just put it off as a project and whatever. Like, he saw me as more of his employee rather than his co-founder. So I decided to leave. I told him that I'm just gonna take my code and leave. And he said, oh, you're stealing intellectual property. He started texting me crazily, and he started calling me. I wouldn't pick up the phone because this guy was like a second-year student at U of T. Some random guy who was taking advantage of a grade 10 kid who didn't want to, like, he wasn't putting in his work, and then he was expecting so much from me, and there was no pay. He wasn't like committing to any amount of percentage that I would get from sales of the software. So super weird. And he ended up like basically threatening to sue me for stealing intellectual property of the company. All of a sudden, it turned into a company when he was always saying that it was a project. And that's the thing, because I know I've met this guy through a friend of mine, but my friend hadn't worked so much with him. So he didn't know how he was actually as like a co-founder or like as a collaborator on a team. So for me, like, it was kind of a scary experience because I had never been through something like that. And it was like a weird guy to work with in general. He seemed to be just taking advantage of my time and not expecting to have to give me anything in return. So that's what I mean, like, there's so many bad apples out there who just want to take advantage of you, especially if you're a young founder, because they see you as someone inferior who they can wow by saying, oh, like he would always say, like, I have so many connections and everything with venture capital and people who can help with the machine learning. What ended up actually happening was I figured out how his end of things worked. And I decided to finish like the application myself by just writing the back end with the machine learning, which was actually just like implementing a vector database and then using an SDK to search through it. So it wasn't as complicated as he made it sound. I was able to implement it. And a lot of people, they try to just, they try to use their position as somebody who is older to seem like they're more experienced and like you need them. So be careful out there. When you're finding co-founders, make sure that you know them ahead of time and make sure that the terms of the agreement are clear at all times, because otherwise you're not going to be able to work with them long term if they're not going to be transparent and straightforward with you.
Interesting. I mean, like listening to this story, I've actually experienced something very similar as well, to be honest, because when I started out doing my, marketing company, I was like 3 months in, and then there's this guy on LinkedIn who decided to message me, and he was like, oh, I see that you're running this marketing company. Can I interview you on a podcast? Something like this. But just trust me on this one. I'm not going to like scam you or anything. I'm not going to sell you anything or whatever. And then, so we hopped on the call, and then I told him beforehand that I had nothing. Like I have nothing like, crazy or anything. I'm just starting off, stuff like that. So he offered to mentor me for a couple of months. And then after that, he was like, oh, why not just hop onto the project that I'm also working on, because I'm building something similar as well. So I was like, yeah, okay, I can't say no to opportunities, right? Because many people out there, they tell you to just say yes to everything, especially when you're young. So I decided to say yes. And then I didn't know that I was falling into, I would say, a partnership where it was like, I was also doing like a lot of the work. He was also doing lots of work, actually. We're putting kind of equivalent amount of work. But at the end of the day, I was probably expecting that he's going to, I guess, like pay me a bit more equity. Like at the end, like I'm just going to tell you, like in the end part, I didn't get any equity at all. And I realized that in the contract that he sent, his name of the company is actually completely different from the company that he registered. So it was kind of like basically a scam, literally. But that was after I left. And it's just surprising because that person is like, I wouldn't name any names here, but he's close to his 30s. He already finished university. So I guess he saw that I was like 16 years old. I was hustling. I probably know a lot more, like because I had more time to learn stuff, in the marketing scenes and, using AI and stuff like that to create copies. So he was like, why not get this guy on? And I guess it was good in a certain sense because I still got experience talking to people, talking to clients and stuff like that. But at the end, like, it's just disappointing to kind of see that some people are just not transparent, right? And like, it's just sad, to be honest. But I mean, even with these mistakes, it's really good to just learn from it, right? And we're still young in one say. So like, even though we might have lost like 6 months investing in a certain project, I mean, at least you learn something and you won't commit it again. And maybe we'll be a better founder, right? Or better CEO where we actually define terms with our, co-founders better, which I'm also trying to do in the startup right now. So this is super interesting. So like, in terms of like your project right now, Great Assist, what's the story with that as well? Like, how did you get started?
Yeah. So that was back in grade 10. I was doing a lot of things back in grade 10, but after an English exam around February, I realized my teacher had a whole stack of essays to grade, of like 60 essays in just one day. And so that's when I realized, because of the other exam that I was doing, there was technology like Scantron to automatically grade multiple choice questions by just inserting a sheet and like, you can get it graded automatically. But why don't we have an equivalent for written work and all these essays and paragraphs that you have to write on tests? So that's when I wanted to create sort of like a Scantron, but for essays, and using like since at the time technology, like the AI technology, large language models, they were advancing so quickly, I realized I could leverage these to create a product that helps teachers save time grading by basically grading it for them, by giving the student feedback and by giving them a grade estimate of what this work deserves based on the criteria. So over like the next few months, I built the first prototype, and I actually made a video like back like a year ago when I was applying to this grant, and like you can look at the video on YouTube, and the product was completely different. And I'm actually kind of proud about how it's improved over time, just talking to customers and talking to teachers who would actually use the software. And it's been a long road. It's been like a year and a half now that I've been developing it, but right now we have 500 teachers. No, actually, yesterday I checked again, there's 600 teachers now using it and 11 teachers who are paying for it. So it's exciting to see the growth, and it's amazing to see how it just came from an idea. Like, why don't we create a stand on presses? And now it's something that teachers are actually getting value out of it.
Awesome. I mean, I think one of the things I respect a lot about the software business and why I'm also trying to get my foot into this whole business is because after you kind of build one project for, I guess, a year or so and you iterate it a lot with customers, you can start working on other projects as well, right? And that will kind of like build passive users and income if your project is really good and you actually solve a pain point. So that's something respectable. So with your other projects as well, like just tell me about it. Like, how did you, like, what I guess is your criteria to assess whether it's a good opportunity to actually stumble upon and you're actually going to put effort in? And do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, my God, I'm balancing 4 different projects right now. Like, what are you doing in that situation? Like, do you just continue grinding those 4 projects, allocate time, split it equally with school as well? Or do you just say no to a certain project, or do you have seasons for it? Like, what's your overall decision, I guess, and also timetable?
That's a great question, actually, because over the summer, I was kind of taking on more projects than I should have. With a friend who wanted to create this app called Do to Serve. And like, it was at the same time while I was building Grade Assist, I was also starting a new project, Tire Clip. And there was just so much going on because I was also trying to put out more content on social media to try to get more exposure. And I decided to take on the project with my friend because he was like, oh no, we can build this in like a weekend. And I started putting in a lot of time developing it. And yeah, it gets overwhelming, like to a point where if you, I like, I've seen this graphic around. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's like a circle in the middle, and then you have a bunch of arrows pointing in different directions. Kind of like if you think about vectors, if you have like the amount of time and effort you can put into something, and then you have it divided like in a bunch of different directions because you're working on multiple different things, you're not going to be able to get as far in any of them as if you just put all your time and energy into one of your projects. And for me, that project I was trying to work on the most was Grade Assist at the time. But I kind of had the fear of missing out on something. And I just love building tech in general. So, well, like, I guess what I've learned over the years is sometimes like some products just aren't worth working on if I don't see like the vision for it. It could be someone else's vision. Like my friend, he had this idea to build a system to notify you when you had assignments coming up at university. Like his university didn't have a system for that. So he wanted to build this. And for him, maybe it was his clear vision and he convinced me on it. But you have to really think about why you're doing it, because if you're in it for the money or if you're in it for an opportunity or you really believe in this product, I think that you should definitely go for it. But don't try to just do multiple things at once just to like minimize your chance of like not succeeding, because you actually have a higher chance of like screwing up all of your projects if you're just not dedicating enough time to, because when you're starting out, especially, you have to dedicate so much time to talking to customers, building the actual product, and like iterating, marketing, all of that, that it really is enough if you're building just one thing. But like, yeah, I've gone through that problem of building too many things at once. That's why right now I'm just focusing on two big things, and I've sort of just left the other project that my friend was working on to him, and I'm just focusing on what I have a clear vision on and what I believe is going to work, like Grade Assist and like a software for basketball coaches. So that's what I'm working on mainly.
Awesome. I think that's a really good point, because for me personally, I also see like many people, and even myself, like we face the fear of FOMO, right? I've tried to balance 5 different projects at the same time. Right now, I'm still also trying to decide whether or not to, because I'm also doing YouTube content creation. We're launching a series where we have like a 10 week long episode where we're teaching people how to just get started. I'm probably going to feature you here, Daniel, as well in some parts of the series. So we can talk about that later on. And also hosting this podcast, right? Outreaching to people is pretty hard as well. Like sometimes it's challenging. And then I'm also building the social networking platform. You still have to balance school and stuff like that. So I think like a story that I've just heard this morning, or just now actually, from one of my parents, because I've been like just spending the whole day just thinking about what you want to do like in the future. And I think it's super important sometimes to do that. But obviously execution is also pretty important. But if you're executing on 4 projects, it's better to just think about minimizing. Is that right now with the Gen Zs, like our parents' generation, I would believe, is like the non-internet generation, right? I think I've watched a video where they talked about how Gen Zs are all, brain rot content, stuff like that. Gen Alpha is not doing too well with that as well. One of the things actually, which I think is a very good point, is about choices. Because back in our older generation, like our parents did not have any choice to a certain extent because they didn't have the internet. Like when they wanted to meet their friends, they had to probably go meet them in person first, tell them you want to meet them at like 2 p.m. and then just wishing yourself the best of luck, they're actually going to appear, right? But right now with the internet, we have the choices of doing thousands of different things. And again, to a certain extent, that is bad because we get FOMO, right? Because right now, you, Daniel, probably you're like, oh my God, I should be also pursuing, maybe more towards also the business side. So I could be like the solo founder, right? Stuff like that. Like even for me personally, I'm always feeling that I'm missing out on more of the tech side because I don't spend too much time on that. I spend too much time on business, customer development, stuff like that. So what I feel like is the solution for this is number one, like the power of co-founders. But again, you need to sort out the bad things, bad apples and stuff like that. And number two is just thinking about what game you want to play in life, right? I think there's a really good book called Psychology of Money by, I forgot who was in, Morgan Housel or something, but he talks about how everyone's playing different games in life, right? Some people are playing towards materialistic wealth and other people are playing towards financial freedom, and it's 2 different games. Just like the stock market itself. Like, are you going to be a long-term investor or are you going to be the day trader? And listening to someone's advice on who's, a day trader would be irrelevant if you're trying to invest long-term as well. So I think those are 2 really good solutions on, I guess, like trying to just focus on a couple of projects and really being successful and just doing the boring things every day, right? Just sticking to that thing. So, I mean, talking more about stories, I know we shared lots here. So are there any other stories that we've missed out or that you think are juicy enough where it's probably pretty surprising as well?
Yeah. I mean, there's one that it was actually like, I think it was a couple of months ago from what I remember. And it was related to Great Assist. And it's, I guess, sort of related to this idea of like bad apples. You want to like be careful. People who are like showing too much enthusiasm in what you're doing, because there was this guy who reached out to me. He was interested in what I was working on with Great Assist. He was also working on his own edtech startup at the time, and I actually made posts about this because it was like such a big problem. He ended up actually so the very first version of Great Assist, I built it out and I applied to an innovation program. And so I sort of had the code public as a way to demonstrate that I built the software and I want to be transparent with it. But it wasn't open source. I wasn't just giving it out for free to anybody to use. And he ended up he didn't even end up cloning the code or anything. What he did was he was building his software to help students basically get improve their work. So get feedback on their essays and stuff like that before they submit. Whereas my thing was oriented towards teachers giving students feedback. But he ended up actually taking videos of my software, Grade Assist, and posting them all over social media, on X, on TikTok, on I think there was another one he did, even like, it was crazy to me, even YouTube Shorts. He was posting all over social media using videos of my software and claiming it to be a feature of his. And he hadn't actually even integrated any of that into his software. Yeah, he didn't have this feature. So he was basically scamming his viewers, telling them to go to his website with like a feature that didn't exist. And he was also stealing my work by saying that that was his work. And he actually posted on Twitter, I remember saying like, basically, we're building a better Grammarly, finally got it working. Like, we're going to be launching it soon. And it was a clear screenshot of my software. He just cropped out the part that said Grade Assist. So it was like crazy to me, because I actually, like, I'd spoken to this guy. He had DM'd me. He would ask me for some help on integrating Google Login on his app. And then he ended up basically like stealing my work. So it was really frustrating at the time. I mean, it still is something pretty crazy to me, because he ended up actually winning an innovation award at the same event that I did for his project, when he was basically scamming his users and stealing work. So, yeah, I made a bunch of posts about this like a long time ago. He wanted me to take them down because obviously they would hurt his reputation, but he knew it was true, and we had a whole discussion. He wanted to call about it. But to me, I told him that I would be willing to remove the posts to help him out so that it wouldn't ruin his reputation if he were to make a statement about, like, apologizing about what he did and acknowledging and like removing all of his posts. But yeah, he didn't decide to do that. And what was the most crazy thing to me was I had already reached out to him privately about this issue multiple times, and he removed some of the videos until I discovered that he had a whole TikTok page like with 13 videos about the same thing, like recording my software and then claiming it to be his. So it's like you have to be careful. Ever since then, I privated all of my code, and like I made it very clear on the website that this is copyright, like Great Assist by Daniel Martinez, so that he wouldn't be able to steal any of my work again. Because it's really frustrating when you spend months and months, and then someone just comes along and thinks that they can just take whatever is available publicly and without even asking. So it was clear that his intention wasn't good, because like if you're unsure about something, if you can use something legally, like you can just ask. He had my contact, and I would have been open to answering any questions he had. But the fact that he did that without my knowledge, and then I asked him to remove videos, and then he still had a bunch of other ones up months later, it was really frustrating. So yeah, be careful out there. Make sure that any code that you leave out publicly, make sure that like is very clear, that people like what you will allow people to do with it, because people might steal your work and you might not even know about it until it's already out there.
Yeah, that's just disgusting, to be honest. Just putting like a line saying that it's copyrighted by yourself is the best way.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Feel sorry for you, to be honest. Like, I can imagine like months of hard work just being stolen by the clips. I mean, like this just comes back to the overall idea of like social media, right? Like what has, I guess, social media become? Because like with, you know, I wouldn't like with so many different content, like, you know, Eric Ju's stuff, like not saying that he's like his stuff is like fake or anything, but there are people who are starting to replicate his content because he's seeing him blow up as well. You know, like even though it might not be entirely legit. So that's kind of ruining the entire thing where like LinkedIn's becoming the whole high school toilet gang is posting on stuff like that. So, I mean, like moving forward, like it's interesting to see how social media will evolve towards, you know, just acquisition of users because there's so much fakeness out there and like what is even authentic anymore, right? Like imagine like people believe that this conversation is whole AI generated. Like how scary would that be? Right? Like that's why I always feel like it's going to somehow revert back to in real life events and meetups, which will really drive like most of the sales, most of the acquisition, like attending events, right? Like shows like that. That's why I feel like that aspect will probably be dominating in the next probably century or so when people are so moving towards, you know, like moving away from social media, I guess, and this whole fakeness on the internet. So, I mean,
Yeah.
how's like your timetable looking like? I think I asked you like something similar before, but like, what's your day to day looking like after school? Like, do you just go home and quickly finish your homework? Do you just do your homework in school? I mean, I think that's what I personally do. Like, I try to finish it in school, and then when you go home, you have lots of time to do whatever you want as well. How's it like for you?
Yeah. I would actually do that. I remember trying to do that as much as I could in the beginning of high school, but as like stuff has grown and I worked on more and more complex projects, it's like I have less and less time for school. I try to basically like get work done, like, and not spend any more time, like any extra time on it, because it's just like a lot of stuff to do outside of school. I have meetings, I have to actually build product, and then I have to do marketing. So creating content is also something I'm trying to do more of, but it also takes a lot of time. So right now, being in grade 12, I just have 3 courses right now, but they are pretty heavy. I have chemistry, advanced functions, and English, and then so it's been difficult to keep up, and I'm still looking at my options of what I'm planning to do because I might have to drop certain courses to have a little bit more time. I don't want to basically be in a course where I'm performing like at half of what I could be. So I'm thinking of maybe taking some online courses instead to finish my high school diploma, but it's still not confirmed yet. So yeah, it's really busy if you're building something, but I think it's awesome because it's sort of like you get to experience both the contrast of being at school with all the different students of your age and also connecting with a world of people who are building crazy, amazing stuff who are like older than you. So it's like, yeah, it's a mix between the two, but it's exciting. So you get to learn a lot from people with more experience.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I think we also talked about how you're going to be like probably looking at colleges in Canada, right? So
Yeah.
what's, I guess, like the overall like vision with the next 10 years? Are you going to continue building products as well? Or what's, I guess, like the plan for now?
So for now, my number one priority is scaling my startup Great Assist and also this like other startup Tiger Clip. I'm not quite sure about university, to be honest. I think it's a good backup plan for me because if for some reason I can't properly scale a startup, I'm going to get like an internship through the university and I can work on that, use it to gain experience, see what kind of problems businesses face in the real world, and also get a salary that I can use to fund my own project. But right now, the main focus is getting the startup to be profitable to a point where I can go full time. So the next 10 years, I'm going to keep on building stuff, even if it's not just Great Assist, even if I pivot to other stuff. And my long-term vision is to also build a school because I think I want to create a solution to the education system because private schools were made to solve the problem of public education. And then the problem with private schools is that they're too expensive. So one day my dream is to create like a nonprofit school where students who are extremely hardworking and are passionate about stuff can come to further develop what they're working on.
Awesome. I really love that vision. I think I have a very similar vision as well, but I think more broad, but like just inspiring other Gen Zs to, just start passionate stuff. So it's awesome to see someone who's also on, the same mission. So like speaking about colleges as well, like I think many builders out there, they're also like heavily researching, even for myself, like what colleges you want to go, because you kind of want to make it effective. And I feel like colleges, to one point, it also does not, it helps open several doors, obviously. Like it doesn't help shut doors. That's probably one of the reasons why many people go to colleges as well. So like in terms of like unique college programs, like what, I think we talked about how York University has like a really interesting digital technology program. So are there any other programs that you think are super interesting and not like the ordinary, college degree that probably builders will want to look at towards, especially when, CS major, like those things, you already like mostly know the content, right? Like you already learned that online. So what are some interesting bachelors that you've heard, which you would consider as well?
So my friend told me about this program. Like he used to live here in Canada and he moved to the States. He said there's this program. I can't remember which university, but it's sort of like a mix of entrepreneurship and computer science. So they also support you in terms of like raising venture capital to support your startup. So any programs that are related to entrepreneurship, if you're into that, I would say you should look into that. And yeah, like York Digital Technologies, what I like about it is it's like the Shopify Dev Degree program where you get to actually work at a company and gain real world experience. So as a builder, I think that's like a great opportunity. For me personally, I've learned everything I know about computer science, not through school. It's been on my own. So I don't think I would go to university for the knowledge, but more for the network and the experience that I can get. So, yeah, if you're looking for programs out there, I think look for real world experience that you can gain from it.
Awesome. So like just to wrap everything up, I would say I keep asking every single guest for one biggest advice. So what would be your, like, I would say like biggest advice, no matter if it's, something that you came up with yourself or probably not, or like heard it from some kind of huge influencer that you really like live up to and that you really would want to share with everyone here?
I think I was just thinking about this last night. I think people sometimes underestimate the power of compounding what you're doing. Like when you start really young, you have the benefit of still being supported by your parents. And like the younger you start, you have a lot of time to try things that are risky, things that might not work out, building something, maybe like a stupid social app like me, like that will die after a couple hundred users because it's like a random anonymous social media app for confessions. But sometimes you just try things for fun. You can learn things. And even if they don't work out, you have all this experience that you learned and it'll compound with every new opportunity that you look for. Like I started just building these, I literally have it right here. I have a 3D printed phone stand that I was selling a couple of years ago. And even though it was my first thing in it, like I stopped doing it. I used this experience that I learned towards getting more experiences because now I can talk about something I did. And now, then when you get the next experience, you're going to have 2 things to talk about and then 3 things and then 4. So start right now because the younger you start, the more opportunities you're going to have. And it's really exciting to see how your work compounds over time.
Awesome. I think this is an awesome way to definitely end the podcast. Just continue putting in the hard work and doors will open. And I think we've also had like some similar experiences on my side. Like just getting started, I think is definitely a amazing contributor to anyone's success. That's why we're also creating a series to just explore different people like yourself. who are also trying to just get started, just get yourself out there and just trying to find something that you're passionate about. So yeah, Daniel, appreciate you hopping on these stories. If anyone wants to contact Daniel, I always link the description. I always link the guests, LinkedIn or, Instagram in the description so you guys can chat with him. Pretty sure he'll be happy to help out or, answer any questions. Maybe try not to, scam his time for anyone who's looking here, who's like 30 years old. But yeah, just awesome speaking with another Gen Z builder and super excited. Like, best of luck with all of your projects, like great assist. Just maybe like in 10 years, like when this things blow up or you build the next Facebook, we'll have you again on this podcast and it'll be an amazing story. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this podcast and catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.